This is the part 7 of the video series on perfect squares or square numbers. To watch the other parts, you can find their video links in the description box below. Now we have two tables here, and each of these tables has two columns. In the first column we have numbers, and in the second column we have their square numbers. Now if you look at these two numbers, that is 10 and 20, these two numbers have one thing in common, and that is they end in 0, that is they have 0 at their units places. Now if you look at their perfect squares or square numbers, the perfect square 100 and the perfect square 400, both these two numbers end in 0, that is they have 0 at their units places. Now no other perfect square in this column and in this column. No other perfect square ends in 0 or has 0 at their units places. In fact, it will be true for any other number. That is, if your perfect square or square number ends in 0, it means that it is a square number of that number that itself ends in 0. Right? No other number ends in 0, therefore no other perfect square, their perfect square don't have 0 at their units places. Only these two numbers end in 0, therefore they have 0 at their units places. Right? So suppose a question is asked to you that you have a square number and it ends in 0, that is it has 0 at its units place. It is a square number. Just ignore the previous digits, focus on this one, that is the last digit. And four options are given to you, that is, this is a square number of a number that ends in 2. This is the square number of a number that ends in 5. C option is of a number that ends in 7. And D option is of a number that ends in 0. And another E option is that another number that ends in 0. So square number, you have to tell out of these five options, which is that number whose perfect square is this number. Instantly ignore these three options, because since this is a square number that has 0 at its units place, it means that it will be perfect square of that number that itself ends in 0. So you are left with these two options. Now you'll have to find out the answer from these two options. It can be either this one or it could be either this one, right? So it depends how you find it. Now, another property that we have to discuss for the same thing. Now what we have done is we have three tables, and now we have numbers 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, 110 to 200, 210 to 300. That is, now all the numbers end in 0, that is they have 0 at their units places. So in that case, again, the perfect squares will end in 0, right? They all have 0. Here also. Okay. So if you look at these numbers, that is from 10 up to 90, from 110 up to 190, from 210 up to 290, all these numbers have one thing in common, that is they have only one 0 at their end. They have single 0. In all these numbers have only single 0, right? All these numbers have only single 0. But if you look at these three numbers, that is 100, 200 and 300, these three numbers have two zeros in those numbers. Okay, so numbers that have only one 0 or contain only single 0 have two zeros in their perfect squares, or square numbers, right? You can check for any number. But those numbers that contain two zeros, have four zeros in their square numbers. So if it has number has 1 0, the perfect square of that number will contain 2 zeros. If your number has 2 zeros, its square number will have 4 zeros. It means that if I write it like this way, if number is 10, then its square number will be 100. If your number is 100, its square number will be 1, 2, 3, 4, that is 10,000. If it is 1000, that is 3 zeros, the square number will have 6 zeros. You can find it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. If it has 4 zeros, then the square number will have 8 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So when you have 1 0, it has 2 zeros. So we can say that number of zeros is 2 times 1. What is this 1? This 1 is the number of 0 which is here. Now this is 4 0, so 2 times 2. What is this 2? This 2 is the number of zeros that is we have here. Here we have 6 zeros. It means that 2 times 3. What is this 3? This 3 is these 3 zeros. Okay. When we have 4 zeros, so we have 8 zeros in square numbers. It means 2 times 4. What's this 4? This 4 is actually these 4 zeros that we have here in this number. It means that, let's say that your number is 1 and it actually contains n zeros. It contains n zeros and you have to find the square number of this number. So if your number, any number, if it has n zeros, so the number of zeros that will be in square numbers will actually be how much? 2 times n. And what's n? N is this number of zeros that is present in this number, right? So let's say that your number is 22308 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If I have to find out the square of perfect square number of this number, and only I want to know how many zeros will be there in the square number. So you have to tell only square zeros, number of zeros. So just count how many zeros you have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you have 8 zeros. So its square number will contain 2 times 8. And this 8 is actually what? This number. So the square number in this case will have 16 zeros. Will have 16 zeros here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay. So remember this one, that is, if you have to tell the number of zeros, then that will be 2 times n. What's n? N is the number of zeros that is present in the number given.